Garfield and surrounding areas. Hey, today at the VPAC, we got Mayor Burke.
How are you? Thanks for having me out here. This is great.
Hey, listen, thanks for coming.
This is the very first time I've ever done a podcast, so I'm kind of new. I'm really new at this. So I've done these Zoom coffee with the mayor's things for about a year now. The Zoom coffee with the mayor, and um, because of the way technology is, I think this is the better form of doing it. So here I am. I want to thank Larry and his team here at the Village of the Performing Arts and Cultural Center here in Garfield Heights. For those of you who do not know, the Garfield Heights Theater is located at the Garfield Mall, or what is now called Garfield Commons, um, is a piece of history here in Garfield Heights. And I remember coming here when I was a kid. Of course, I'm always a kid at heart, but coming in here when I was a kid, a teenager, and watching movies. I think one of the very first movies I ever seen in here was either Top Gun or The Karate Kid. So this is this is quite the treat to actually come in and see the theaters the way they were back in the 80s and the 90s, and they look very, very much the same. So it's kind of like walking back in time, and it's really neat. Thanks, Larry. If anybody wants to call in, I do have a number that you can call in for this podcast. It is area code 216-236-5582. And feel free to call in and ask some questions. A couple things that I wanted to talk about here in that's going on in Garfield Heights. First of all, since taking office in February 2021 as an interim mayor and then being elected in November, um, I've made a few changes to the city, and I think they're all for the positive. Number one, I have to talk a little bit about our new website. When I took over, we had a website that was very, very behind the times. It was more of an information site than an interactive type site, and I felt a strong need to have features like push notification, report a concern, these type of things that I think are important in today's society. So if you take a look at our website, the web address is www.garfieldhts.org. You'll see things on there like, first of all, you come out to a very, very um, nice interactive page. It's vibrant. It is welcoming. It's easy to navigate. You have a search engine tab there. You can just type in what you're looking for, and hopefully it takes you right to what you need. Um, since we launched a page about, I want to say 6 to 8 months ago, we had to tweak it a few times, but you know, things like the calendar on the page itself. If you sign up for the calendar, whenever there's an event, it automatically sends that event out to you in a push notification to your phone, to your email, however you tell us you want it to notify you. Um, Give you an example. Our Ward 5 Councilwoman Tonsing, just the other day said she wanted to do a meeting. Um, she wanted to do something different than just a block watch meeting or a community awareness type meeting. Um, so she decided let's just do a meet and greet, a holiday meet and greet, and she did a Ward 5 holiday or ugly holiday sweater meet and greet. It's sounds like something that's going to be fun and welcoming. I am definitely going to be there. I don't really own an ugly holiday sweater, but I can tell you between now and then I will find something that is ugly and hideous and attention getting, um, just to be able to participate in that. And really the thing is it's a meet and greet for her, but it's also a way to get in and hear what's going on in Ward 5 and also what's going on in the city of Garfield Heights. Um, it's something that I think all of us on council, all the people on council, all of us leaders in the city, we want to make sure that we put the word out there to people that this is what's going on in the community. These are the topics. These are the things that are important. And then we also want to be able to hear from the community as to what's important to them. Um, so that's our new website. Uh, a great feature on our website that I think a lot of people are starting to really embrace is the report a concern feature that's on there. Basically, what you do is you just click on report a concern if you have a concern about something going on in the city, and you can fill out an interactive form. Basically, you, I believe, can put some pictures in there if you need to, and then just hit send. And from there, it goes to the right department, and that department can then handle the issue. And I'll give you a couple of examples of this. We've had a couple of homes where they're obviously vacant, or somebody moved out of the house, and it's a rental property, and the owner of the property happens to be a company that's out of state, or in some cases out of the country. And I'm not sure if there's any way we can stop that from happening. But what these companies do is they will hire a property maintenance company to come in and maintain their property. Well, we've had issues where one particular home, the windows and the doors, when the people left, they left the windows open, they left the doors open, wide open. The property hasn't been maintained. So we don't know these things unless somebody calls it in or we happen to stumble across it, you know. And somebody had called us. We tried to reach out to the company that owns the home. And of course, they said, well, our property maintenance people are supposed to go over there and fix it. Um, they have been calling and calling and calling for a while. The resident has been calling for a while. We had them do the report of concern, and it went to the right person, the right department. An inspector got out there. He was able to cite the conditions of the house. We sent the company a letter, and lo and behold, things are getting done and they're moving forward. And it's just because rather than calling in and talking to the wrong person, and that person's got to try to give this information to another person who's got to go down the hall and give it to another person, this report of concern, all the facts are right in there. And it goes right to the right department. We have one person that looks at all that stuff, and then she moves it to the department that it needs to be in. So report of concern is huge right now with the Garfield Heights website. Once again, that web address is www.garfieldhts.org.
Mayor Burt,
Yes.
one of the questions that just came back is, I mean, just came over my Facebook is, what's the difference between Garfield now and Garfield of the past? You know, I see a big change. Why don't you explain that?
Well, I think a lot of times, you know, I've lived in Garfield Heights since 1978, and growing up in Garfield Heights, you know, I've seen this city change a lot, and it's just human nature sometimes to become complacent. And when you look at Garfield Heights back in the 80s and 90s under Mayor Longo, we were really uh, a city that was building and really progressing. Um, Mayor Longo, you know, we wouldn't have where our civic center is today. That those grounds, he was able to get that built in 1983, I believe. You look at everybody talks about City View Center, which is something that was done on Mayor Longo's watch, and then subsequently it fell apart. And then you know he left office, and Mayor Kalova took over, and we were in fiscal emergency at the time, and you know um, those are days of the past. But in some respects, some people still think the way that we thought in the past. And I come into office here, and it wasn't just me. I don't want to say it was just me. I just think the world has changed to the point where we have to recognize that things are different. For years and years and years, as a council person and as a council president, I started instead of doing a block watch, I felt the need to do the community awareness meetings. Um, I've always been a big proponent of letting people speak and people that want to be heard. Whether it's good or bad, what you want to say, it's important. If you feel a need to talk about it, it's important to me that you are able to talk about what your feelings are and what your issues are, um, good or bad. And when I when I started the community awareness meeting, it was because I had gone to a lot of block watch meetings, and it was the same thing. The person that ran the meeting, whether they were the council person or just the person that was in charge of running the meeting, you heard them talk for a half an hour. You may get something out of the mayor, you may get something out of the police chief, and then you bought a raffle ticket, you won a prize, and you went home. You didn't get a chance to be heard. And I wanted to change that when I did my Ward 6 community awareness meeting. And that was, you came in, you heard a short address from the council person and the mayor. But really, the mayor's role was to be there to answer questions. The police chief's role was to be there to answer questions. And we would open it up to residents to be able to just ask their questions and talk about their concerns. And lo and behold, I didn't know if it would work, but it worked tremendously, to the point where I think people realize, um, this is how this is how the world has changed, and this is what needs to be done. We have to give the residents and our constituents a venue where they can be heard and where they can express their concerns. I That was just my belief. It worked for me. I believe it still works today. My last town hall meeting that I did about a month and a half ago or so, I spoke for maybe 45 minutes, but then I opened it up for almost 2 hours for residents to ask me questions. And, some of them were good questions, some of them were politically motivated questions, and some of them were, concerns about what was going on in the community and some of their frustrations. But at any rate, I stood there for almost 2 hours and made sure that anybody that had a concern and wanted to be heard was able to do that. And even after that, after the event was over, I still had people that would call in and or call me or come straight up to me after the event and want to talk about a concern that they had, that they didn't want to do it on camera, or in a public meeting. And that's equally as important. I think the reputation I have as a mayor in Garfield Heights here is that I'm approachable. I I return phone calls. I can't tell you how many residents that I return their phone calls. They say to me, "I can't believe you called me back." They were expecting somebody on my staff to call them back, and I'm sure that happens too. But when it gets to a point where it gets to me, I do call people back. And I know some of the conversations aren't going to be pleasant, but you can't fix it if you don't know about it. You can't address it if you don't know about it. And that's just the way I feel. Um, so, to answer the question, Larry, I think that communication now is better than it was. I also think that we are on a trend upwards to to a city that can be much like what you see over there at the Van Aken district, what you see at Ohio City and Tremont. Um, I always have asked, why does everybody else get it and we don't here in Garfield Heights?
So what is it going to take? What can the residents do to participate? How can we get involved?
Well, first of all, we need to all be positive and we need to be patient. Um, we are on the verge right now. There's a pond being restored at the Garfield Park Reservation. And the Metro Parks has been very, very instrumental in getting that done because they want that part of history back, you know. And then you turn around and you look at Garfield Boulevard. Now, 10 years ago, we talked about Garfield Boulevard and striping in a bicycle lane. Um, if you, I've done a lot of traveling as a both as a floor covering representative when I worked in the floor covering business, and just on my own, And when you go to places like Chicago, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Seattle, New York, people get around on their bicycles, they walk, there's connectivity all over. And that's something that I think everybody in Cleveland sees that we need to get to in order to stack up with the rest of those other cities, those major cities. And when they look at connectivity, they like these bicycle lanes. And I'm a cyclist too, so I was very supportive of a bike lane. Only I was a little different than in the past. We didn't have money in the past to do it, and it would have just been a striped lane down Garfield Boulevard. Well, we decided that I decided that I don't want that. I want something a little nicer for the residents of Garfield Heights. Why don't we deserve that? I mean, I get thrown in my face all the time. We pay the highest tax rate there is in the county, or we're the fourth highest tax rate. And for what I won't be the guy that sits there and tells you, well, it's because of this and it's because of that. I mean, it, there's no question, the city isn't the one that raised the taxes. I mean, it just happens. It happens with school levies, and the schools need that funding. It happens with uh, other taxes that are in the county that go up. But to be honest, the city hasn't raised your taxes since 1976. So we still get 20 cents on each dollar that's collected, and we have to run the entire city with that. However, why can't we get what other cities get? And when I asked that with Garfield Boulevard, I said, I would like to see not just a bike lane, but some green space, some bioswales, some fun, exciting things that can spark economic growth in our city. And a lot of people say, well, how does a bicycle lane spark economic growth in the city? Well, if you look at that being a major way to connect the Garfield Heights Metro Parks, Morgana Park, to all the way down to Bocce Park in Cuyahoga Heights there, and then over to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and the towpath. When you get to the towpath, you could take that towpath clear down to Akron. You can take it all the way out to Allegheny, Pennsylvania, and more importantly, you could go to the east and west side of Cleveland. And I've ridden from yours truly down there in Independence all the way out to Edgewater Park on my bicycle and back. And it's a good workout. It's a very scenic ride, and it's very relaxing to me, to be honest with you. But why can't we do that here in Garfield Heights? So let's just say we get the path in, and we're really close. We're about $450,000 away from making that happen, and it's going to happen. Um, but now you come back with things like a transit oriented district in that area. What's a transit oriented district? Go look at what they've done at that Van Aken district in Shaker Heights. Buildings that they created incentive, they created abatement, they created things that would cause the people who own those buildings over there to tear them down and build a new building that has your market on the very bottom floor, but then apartments above. And this is the new trendy way that the world is today. And that's the reason why you have what happens in Ohio City with their growth over there. You see it happening, like I said, in the Van Aken district. Tremont, it was developed that way. Um, but it's the partners. It's everybody partnered together to make that happen. The county, the city, um, the greenways people, the metro parks. everybody gets together and they make it happen. The problem I think we've had in Garfield Heights was we've never gone after it. And you have to have a plan and you have to go after it. You have to have a vision and you have to go after it because our residents deserve that. And so one of these days, I could really see, and it may not happen on my watch, but if I can get the ball started, the ball rolling here, I'd like to see it happen one of these days where Garfield Boulevard and that section of Turney Road there, right on that corner, that becomes our historic district in Garfield Heights.
What's going on Transportation Boulevard? I'm hearing some exciting things that may be occurring here.
Over on I-480 and transportation, you've seen where industrial commercial properties has has really revamped that particular City View shopping center. They call it Highland Park now, and the reason why they call it Highland Park, they had a vision, and I've been saying it with my community awareness meetings. I think you can go back 6 years, and I actually said it 6 years ago. The world has changed. I get people to say, why can't we get a mall over there? Well, take a look at the world today. Who really goes to the mall? Everybody buys everything online. And if that wasn't the case, why did they build a brand new Amazon right down over the hill from us in Valley View? And I'll tell you, they chose Valley View because the tax rate is less, and they probably got more incentive for it. This is just what happens. But industrial commercial properties has a vision of, we're going to bring people up to the highlands here in Garfield Heights. And that's why they called it Highland Park. And I thought that was a genius thing for them to do. But they market it towards industrial, they market it towards manufacturing and distribution. And if you look at Garfield Heights, we are located in the middle of just about anything. You've got a 10-minute ride to I-71, to I-90, and to the Turnpike. And then right in our backyard, you're at I-480 and 77, which is the busiest, one of the busiest intersections in the state of Ohio. Um, there's 180,000, if not more now, vehicles that travel over the I-480 bridge a day. 180,000 a day. If you're going to move product, and I was in floor covering manufacturing and distribution for years, if you are going to move product, one of the most effective places to be is Garfield Heights. You can move product very, very strategically, very fast. I mean, between here and Pittsburgh, it's about a 2 hour drive. Columbus is about 2 hours. Toledo is under 2 hours nowadays. So you could cover a lot of ground and move a lot of product from here. And that's the reason why Transportation Boulevard has been on the radar of one of our very um, important people right now, and that is newly elected council executive or county executive Chris Ronayne. Chris and I we talked a couple years ago when we first met, and I was very ecstatic the other night when he won and he had his victory speech. And one of the things he said to me uh, when we spoke that night in person, he brought up Rockside and he brought up transportation and he said we need to talk about that road project. And so I think on the horizon he has on his vision that one of the best ways to grow jobs in the county, grow the economy in the county, is through Garfield Heights. And I think he has that on his radar.
So, what's your vision for Garfield?
I want to make our city trendy, bring it up to date. You know, we need that. We need that walkability. We need that historic district. We need to bring businesses here. We need to have the area of transportation, Granger Road, to be um, the area where you have the industry and businesses like that. Um, I could see one of these days a new interchange going in right in my front yard. Actually, I live right off the exit of I-480 and Granger Road, and they are talking about ODOT Marymount Hospital, Cleveland Clinic, the city, we're all talking about one of these days making that a full interchange. So you'll be able to get onto I 480 headed eastbound where you currently can't do that now. And you'll be able to exit going westbound where you can't do that right now. And the reason why that's so important is not because we want to add another interchange just to add another interchange. It's because it makes it safer. You know, we have railroad tracks that go through Garfield Heights, and if you're on the other side of Broadway and you have to come up McCracken Road to get to Marymount Hospital, if you're delayed by a train, it could cost somebody their life. If you can get on at Broadway and get off at Granger Road, you can literally drive right into the front of Marymount Hospital and drop a patient off or somebody who's injured, and that's important. That's important, not just for our community, but look at Maple Heights. I mean, their residents have to come to Marymount too, or they have to go to South Point, and if they're delayed at that train, you know, it could cost a life. And I think for the safety of everybody involved, that's something that needs to be done. I know that is on the radar of ODOT and like I said, Marymount Hospital is really really driving for it. So it's something we're in support of, and I could see that if that were to happen, that there's a corridor right there in Garfield Heights that could be converted from residential to mixed use, commercial mixed use, and then you see these buildings where you have apartments and things like that along that corridor. You know, it's just a change.
I tell you what, I want to ask you a question. What are some of the challenges that you think you're going to have to face here in Garfield? Because there's challenges with anything that you have, excuse me, when you're trying to, do what you're trying to do in this city.
Let me tell you, the biggest challenge that I see is not so much. A lot of people say, "Well, we're more diverse now than we were before. Our community has changed, the demographics has changed," and that's all true. But the biggest challenge is, in my opinion, and I see it throughout the nation, is this conflict that goes on between the baby boomer Gen X's like me and the millennial and Gen Z generations. And I talk about this all the time. I If you look at the early 1900s, you had the silent generation, which was about 28, I think 28 million people, and they gave birth to the largest generation at that time on Earth, which was the baby boomer generation, and there was 72 million strong. And baby boomers have done things that they really put the United States on the map. You know, we put a man on the moon. They invented fast food, things like all things like that, the microwave oven, type of things like that. Um, and they said to their parents, "Listen, this is the way we do things." You know, mom and dad would say, "Why are you going to McDonald's?" Or why, look at Happy Days, the show Happy Days. They hung out at the diner there. And, "Why are you going there? We could eat right here. You're wasting your money." And they said, "You know what? We're 72 million strong. We're This is what we do, you know." And so their parents were probably a little frustrated with them. Well, fast forward now, you got these millennials that are 96 million strong or 98 million strong, and they do things differently. Like, they don't go to the mall. They buy everything online. They will order their groceries online. I'm still a guy that likes to go and look at the tomatoes and touch the tomatoes and not know exactly what I'm buying, They order it online and they go and pick it up. And nobody ever sits down and talks to the young people anymore like we used to do. When I was a young man growing up, I remember Mr. Perk over there right across the street from where I live now. He had a small little ice cream shop that's no longer there. And I remember talking to him we delivered the newspapers. So me and my friends that delivered the newspapers, we would stop there and he would talk to us. He took the time to engage with us youngsters. Well, today I don't see that happens. I think the community doesn't engage like that for whatever reason. But when you look at the millennials and you say, okay, why would you buy your groceries online? Why don't you just go to the grocery store? Some people equate that to, well, they're just lazy. Or why do you only want to work 4 days a week? Um, when everybody else works eight or 40 hours a week in 5 days or 6 days or whatever. Why would you want to do that? Because they're lazy. But they don't understand. Like I ask baby boomers all the time, I said, what's the worst thing you've ever seen on TV? In live TV, what was the worst thing that you have ever seen happen? The worst tragedy you ever seen happen? And a lot of them can agree that it was when President Kennedy was assassinated. And then I look at my generation, the Gen X's, undoubtedly. I mean, the it's the space shuttle that blew up. We were all in class watching the space shuttle. There was a teacher on that mission, and the space shuttle blows up in front of our faces. You look at millennials today, and you wonder, well, why do they only work 4 days a week? They don't realize that he works 4 days a week so his wife can be home with the kids. And then when he's home with the kids the next 3 days, she's at work because she's a nurse and she'd probably rather work 12 hours a day, 3 days a week than 5 days a week or what have you. And it's because they don't want to send their kids in harm's way. They've grown up with Sandy Hook, Columbine. Look at Uvalde now, they've grown up with a pandemic and 9/11. They're so worried about the safety of their children. They don't want their children out of their sight. And if it means that, listen, I'll go to soccer practice and be there with my child, or I'll go to the park and be there with my child, and what I have to give up is going to the grocery store and picking out my tomatoes, I'll order those online and pick them up because I don't want to spend time with my children at the grocery store. I don't want that to be a family event. I want the family event to be going to the park, the Great Lakes Science Center, the zoo, what have you. And then we'll pick it up on the way home.
So things are changing
Oh,
in our
yeah.
community, and that's a very strong statement that you made, and I think it's something that a lot of individuals have not considered. We have a problem a lot of times when both parents work the way that they work. Which someone just texted me about another question, and what they said, listen, ask the mayor this, okay, the police department. That's something that has always been some issues for individuals when they are traveling in Garfield. What would you say to someone that is a little bit concerned when they travel through Garfield and they are from an urban area and they are concerned of maybe just being pulled over for no reason or whatever? What are some of the things that you are trying to do to make them feel more comfortable about that?
I will say this in speaking to all of our police officers, and we have a very good group of officers here. We just had the Veterans Days service yesterday, and I mentioned that not just our police officers, but our a lot of the people that are on our fire department as well are veterans. Um, I don't know. Are there bad police officers? Absolutely. I mean, look at what's happened nationally with some of the officers and some of the things that we've seen. But I could tell you here in Garfield Heights, we've worked hard to make our officers and our police force very, very unique and very diverse. And I could tell you a lot about different officers here. One of my favorite officers is Officer Ahiri, Yusuf Ahiri. He's actually from the Middle East. He's of Middle Eastern descent. A lot of times we don't take into consideration that we have a population of people here in the United States that are from the Middle East, and the we have business owners here that are from the Middle East, and they don't understand the culture that we have, and we don't understand their culture. But I'll tell you, it helps dramatically when you have an officer that speaks the language, understands the culture, and can go in and talk with those individuals. We have, um, you know, uh, we call him Lou, but his name is Louis Aging, and he is from Sudan. And he is the first of all, he has the best smile on the entire force. I'm convinced he has the best smile on the entire force, and but when he smiles, I've watched the young people engage with him and actually go up and say hi to him. And when he speaks, he has an accent, so they're curious about, where are you from and things. And he shares his story, and he's one of our best officers because he just has a calmness to him, a calming effect to him. And then we have officers like Officer Dodge and Officer Pitts, who, Officer Pitts is a Marine. He was well. They say once a Marine, always a Marine. I was in the
Semper
Army,
Fi was in the
right?
Marines. Yes, without a doubt.
Once a Marine, always a Marine. And he's not in the Marines anymore. But I'll tell you, one of the things he did was, and I don't know if you remember, but years ago there was a gentleman who took his girlfriend hostage and shot her kids in broad daylight right in the driveway. And it was a tragic moment in Garfield Heights. It was an ugly part of our history if you think about it. But Officer Pitts pulls up on the scene, and he immediately grabs a triage kit that he put together out of his trunk and starts to administer first aid to the young individual that was shot. And then while he was doing that, the gentleman shot the daughter and killed her right in the driveway. And he was under fire while he was doing that. But you know what? He did that. He tried to save that young man's life. And the young man eventually died at the hospital. But um, all the officers said, they where did you get this triage kit that you call it? And he said, I learned that when I was in the Marines. And I'm going to tell you, each and every one of our officers wanted a triage kit. And so Officer Pitts gave them a list of what they needed to buy because he bought it out of his own pocket. And they all did the same thing. They made their own triage kits. He trained them how to save lives. And I'll tell you what, fast forward a couple years ago, we had an incident in Ward 1 over there, I believe, on, I want to say it was Rexwood. It might have been Christine, where there was, no, it was on Alvin. It was on Alvin, where there was a shooting that took place, and two individuals were shot by crossfire. One was a 10-year-old boy, and one was a 10-year-old girl. And Officer Dodge, who was also a military person, and then at the time we had Officer Suleiman, who was moved on to Lakewood where he lives now. We hated to see him go because he was another Middle Eastern descent, and he helped calm things down. But both of those two individuals, they even got an award for it. They saved the lives of two 10-year-old children because they put a tourniquet on them to stop the bleeding. These two were serious condition when they rolled up on them. When you talk about the police, I don't think any officer out there dreams of having to do that. I can tell you, as far as I know, most of our officers, I don't think are confrontational. Have we had them in the past? I'm sure we have. I'm sure you can't vet everybody and believe everybody, but I'm sure that we've had in the past. But now our officers are very diverse. That we've gotten younger, um, and so I think we're on a path to good things here with our police force. They're very helpful, and I will say right at the helm, Chief Mark Kay. He's he's a younger chief. I think probably one of the youngest in the state of Ohio, and you know when I seen how Governor DeWine, who had just given the $1.3 million grant to the city of Garfield Heights Police Department, when we were in a meeting with Governor DeWine and other recipients of this type of grant, he really was more leaning on Chief K than anybody else, and I
Well,
think because he recognizes here's a young individual who has a level head, and I Chief K showed his leadership in that meeting that was unprecedented. If
well, I
you
met
if
the chiefs, and I think it's Dale. Dale is assistant chief, isn't
Da-
it?
yeah, Dale Merchant,
Right. He
Deputy
is
Chief
eager
Merchant.
to work with us. He wants. I will say this. He does want to improve the way that the police in Garfield are considered. So, what I would like to do, I'm going to actually. I know I can get him on the show. I'm going to have him here with you, if that's okay. And then that would really be a good introduction to some of the changes that the police have to deal with. But I've met a lot of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Deputy Chief Merchant. I have to say this because there's three individuals who took the chief's exam to become the next police chief. When I became the mayor, they were interim, right? So they all took the test, and of course, Chief K, he scored the highest between the three of them, and so what you have is the second highest score was Deputy Chief Merchant, and the two of them work well. Well, Deputy Chief Merchant has been on the Garfield Heights force for ever. He's forever. We would not have a canine unit if it wasn't for Deputy Chief Merchant. He was one of our very first canine officers, and he kind of started that program. And then as the years progressed, he is a technology driven guy. Um, he understands the way the world has changed, and we would not have a drone unit that we have today if it wasn't for Deputy Chief Merchant. Um, he is very forward thinking. Um, we had an incident last year where I was at the Garfield Heights High School, and all of a sudden we're on lockdown. And of course, you hear about these things, but I never experienced one. I will tell you, the Garfield Heights students, the high school students, very well prepared for that. We had a armed individual within the school. I seen how terrified these children were um, firsthand. I seen how terrified they were. But when I spoke with them, my very first instinct in my training in the military was you have to keep them calm. You have to keep them very calm. I could see the fear in their eyes, but I told them, listen, we're not going to let anything happen to you today. And I said, we have some technology. We're going to get these guys. Um, I'm, I'm sure that they will exit the building somewhere, but when they do, we will get them. And of course, we had the entire force pretty much out there surrounding the parking lot. And we apprehended these two individuals within probably 6 minutes of them leaving the school. They had, they had sneaked out I believe, the gymnasium doors, and they were walking down the street when our officers pulled up on them, guns drawn, to apprehend them. And I'll tell you, the look on their faces were, how did they know it was us? Because they were walking down the street like they had nothing to do with it. They didn't know, we wouldn't know. How did they know it was us? And it's because of our drones. We have an eye in the sky that was watching the perimeter, and when they exited the building, we were right on them. We knew it was those two, and we went. And of course, when we apprehended them, we got the gun, and I believe those two individuals are on trial or they're in jail today, and the streets are safer, because of it. But it doesn't stop there. I mean, Deputy Chief Merchant and Chief K, very instrumental in starting a target enforcement unit here in Garfield Heights. The team is made up of four officers. You don't know which four officers it's going to be because we actually have more than four officers on the force that are trained to do this. Um, but they will get out in front of crime. They will work hand in hand with the Ohio Investigative Unit, with BCI, with SWAT and the SEAL team. They work undercover. They've been very instrumental in taking guns off the street and apprehending some very bad individuals. Um, but it's like the entire world today has changed. You have individuals that have mental illness that are running around with guns, and to the point where you never had it this bad before, where people were doing that. You may have run into somebody that was, you know, um, mentally challenged that had a gun. Maybe once or twice you'd hear about that back in the day, but now it seems like you hear about it more and more. Um, every day when you turn on the news. It is incredibly challenging because every time you turn on the news, it seems like somewhere in the United States there's a shooting. And let's just, I mean, the thing that scares me the most as a mayor is, and I know it scares the school board and the school superintendent, of which I will have to say I love the new school superintendent, Dr. Richard Reynolds. I mean, I've only met him a few times, engaged with him a few times, but I'm going to tell you what, I can see a friendship that's brewing here that's going to be around for a long time because he is just that quality individual that we need in our school systems. But I let them know that we are right there in the trenches with them, trying to help make those schools safer and safe for our children. And they appreciate that, but you know, we need patience. We need people to be patient with us because some of the youth is very interesting in how they do things. And you know, I don't know where a 14-year-old or a 12-year-old gets a gun. I don't know where they get an assault rifle. I think that there's really no good for a child to have an AR-15. But then you also have to keep an open mind. Are they doing it because they feel like they're under attack at the school, or maybe somebody walks in with a gun, and they want to make sure that they can defend themselves too? So I will just say this: I'll go on record as saying there is no good reason to have a gun in any school.
So, Mayor, we're going to change the tone a little bit. We got about 12 minutes. So, what message would you give the community that you serve here? What would you say to them if you could just speak like you speak, just naturally? What would you say?
I would say be proud that you're from Garfield Heights because I am, and I always have been proud to be from Garfield Heights. There's people that look at the cup as being half empty, and there's people that look at the glass as being half full. And I run into people a lot that say negative things about Garfield Heights. I will say this: if you moved away from Garfield Heights and you don't have any interest in Garfield Heights anymore, then just stay away from Garfield Heights. But the rest of us that stayed here, the rest of us that make this our home, we're very proud to be from Garfield Heights. We're proud of our Garfield Heights graduates and the people that have come through this town to make themselves successful. People like Wilma Smith, who we saw on TV for a lot of years, uh, friends like I went to high school with, uh, Beth Stolarczyk, who is an MTV reality TV star. She lives in Hollywood, California. She has donated quite a bit. I have to say thank you to her because she's donated a lot to our youth in the last couple of years, and she doesn't ever want any recognition for it. You know, people like our new mayor in Cleveland, Mayor Bibb. He went. He's a proud graduate of Trinity High School, and his mom lives here in Garfield Heights. And so, when people say we're not safe, well, we try our hardest to keep Mayor Bibb's mom safe as well. I mean, it's not just all of our residents, but there are people that have come through Garfield Heights that are very successful. And I'm going to tell you, um, I I remember a young man that played football with my son, or my son. They were on the same team together. And this young man today, um, I don't know if he still plays for the Los Angeles Rams, but when he came back this summer and engaged with the youth in our community, not just for his own foundation that he has, but also to help another classmate of his that he knew that was putting on our flag football program. The gentleman did it out of his own pocket, and Jalen Rose comes in, and or AJ Rose comes in and just basically um, took his own time and his own. Just he's a quality individual, and he's a young man, and nobody celebrates these young quality individuals that we have in our community. I would say to people, I'm proud of being from Garfield Heights, and I think you should be too because of the people we have that came through here and are doing good for our community. Because if you're truly a Garfield Heights resident, you grew up in Garfield Heights, yes, when you move, you're always going to want to be part of Garfield Heights.
Now, you and I have talked about some of your plans that you had for Attorney Road going down. Would you like to speak briefly on anything
It,
like
it,
that?
it it gets back to that transit oriented district. Um, we have some old buildings. We just completed the Cuyahoga County Master Plan with Garfield Heights, and they showed us a rendering of Town Shopping Center. And I'll tell you, I grew up 1986, 87. I started my career in the floor covering business as a stock person at Color Tile, right where Domino's Pizza is today in Town. And when they show this a rendering of what could happen, if you designate that area as a commercial mixed use district, you offer some incentive like tax abatement and improvement incentives. You get the county involved with some of the grant funding that could happen. And then the people who own Town, if they bought into it and said that, listen, we would do this because um, if they could literally turn that whole shopping center into you know what you see at some of these other cities where you walk in and there's a market district, not just a Dave's supermarket, but a market district.
That
You
looks
walk
like
in.
that's your vision. I can see the excitement in your
Oh,
eyes. Is that?
it is. I mean, why not us? I always say, why not us? You know, they do it in other cities, but why can't we do it? It's because we don't put our heads together and we don't work together to make it happen. We're too busy criticizing one another sometimes. There's too much of that fighting going on with one another. But if we had a vision and if we stood by our vision and said, listen, this could happen, all we have to do is designate this area for a community reinvestment area. I mean, I want to designate the entire city for CRA, offer people a way to upgrade their homes, offer people an incentive to upgrade the commercial buildings. But can you imagine if you walk into a market, you go to Saucy Brew Works down in Ohio City. You walk in, you get a pizza. There's a nice little pub, but upstairs there's 3 stories of apartments or so.
Do you think we can attract big corporations and businesses like that so that this area could be some type of trendy area, sort of like maybe similar to Ohio City or something like that? You think that's possible?
I think we're already attracting them. To be honest with you, I mean, look at industrial commercial properties 4 or 5 years ago when I met them. The vision was Garfield Heights is great for manufacturing and distribution. And I couldn't agree more because I was in manufacturing and distribution at the time. So I understood what they were getting at. But when you look at where we're positioned in Ohio, I recently was up in Canada with a delegation of mayors, talking with Canadian mayors, talking with the Canadian consulate, with people from Jobs Ohio, and the U.S. Canadian, Chamber of Commerce. Uh, we have this United States Mexican Canadian trade agreement that was formed. It took the place of NAFTA. It's very fair, but I'm going to tell you, Canada, they are one of the, they claim to be the only nation that can harvest and build the electric vehicle battery. And they want to, they're all over electric vehicles, right? Well, we're 3 hours away. We're literally 3, 4 hours away from right across the lake. You know, they're building a brand new another entrance into the United States over there in Windsor and Detroit. So you'll have three ways to get into the United States there, right? You know why? Because they want to move product here. And I'll tell you what, I was disappointed because I met a business owner there who went to Dayton and bought property in Dayton. And I said to her, and they are a grocery company. They market Indian groceries that they import and things like that. And they're a pretty big outfit. When I started to tell her about Garfield Heights and Highland Park and Bridgeview Crossing and where we're located at with I-40, you know, and 71, I said, she actually said the farthest that we would have to go is from Dayton to Pittsburgh to move product. And I said, if you had come to Garfield Heights, Pittsburgh's 2 hours away, Dayton's 4 hours away. You're almost in the middle, but guess what? Instead of taking your product through Canada, through the tunnel over there in Windsor and down to Dayton, you could just put it on a freight liner across the lake to the port of Cleveland, and you're right there. You're ready to distribute product right there. Well, talking about that, the people who want to build the electric car batteries and supply them, guess what? They can look at Garfield Heights and say, that's a great place for us to distribute those. And but you got to know, you have to see that vision. And I
Well,
don't think a lot of people see that. We have a foreign country that's 3 hours away, 4 hours away, that is just dying to do business with the United States of America.
but that's looking forward, and I don't think a
Right.
lot of people know how to do that. Mayor Burke, thank you so much. I think that this is something that's needed. It gives everybody a understanding of the person that you are, and I thank you so much for taking the time out. Now, would you like to tell them how often you're going to do this and what your plans are?
Yeah, I want to do this once a month, at least during the winter months. It gets harder for people to be able to get out during the winter months. In the summertime, I try to get out and engage with the community and be out with everybody there in person. But I'll tell you, during the winter months, I've always done the Zoom coffee with the mayor. This is going to take the place of Zoom coffee with the mayor, only because I just think this is the better way to communicate. It gives you a reason, or gives you a way to call in to me. Again, that number, if you need to call in here during the podcast, is 216-236-5582. Don't be afraid to call in and ask me a question. Let me tell you, a lot of people that have got to know me here in the last year or so have said that they like talking. They like the fact that they can debate with me. I've made a lot of great friends over the last year in the community. And I'm also going to continue to do things like my town hall meeting. I feel that that's important, that everybody in the city knows what is going on, when it's going on, and not what we're doing, going forward. But I thank you for having me on the show. I wish everybody um, a safe Thanksgiving and holiday season here, and just be safe and don't be afraid to call.
Thanks,
Thanks.
thanks, thanks again. Thanks a million times over. And we're going to be putting that number out, and we're going to definitely make sure that we get everybody involved, Mayor Burke. And again, thank you so much for coming on. Hey, this is VPAC, and we're going to bring all this good conversation to you every moment and every chance that we get.